Hello, we are included in Youth Cultural Core. Now we will introduce about Namsan Hanok Village. Namsan-go Hanok Village is a collection of 5 hanoks, which is traditional Korean houses from the Joseon dynasty recovered from different parts of the city and relocated to the northern foot of Namsan Mountain. The interiors of each of these 5 houses reflect owners from different walks of life. The middle class to the Yangban, who are mainly high government officials, noblemen, and aristocrats. At Namsan-go Hanok Village, visitors can see the hanok of important figures from the Joseon era, including the house of Queen Yoon's parents, who was the queen consort to the King Sunjong, the 27th king of Joseon dynasty. The Jaeshil of Yoon Tae-kyung, King Sunjong's father-in-law. The house of Park Young-hyo, the son-in-law of King Cheoljong, the 25th king. The house of Lee Seung-up, who was in charge of constructing Gyeongbokgung Palace, and the house of Kim Chun-young, the military official of the Joseon dynasty.
This house that you can see in front is called Master Carpenter Lee's house. And Master Carpenter Lee was the owner of this house, and there were rankings in Joseon dynasty. And the Master Carpenter was all of the carpenters' leader. So he could have a good house. However, Master Carpenter didn't really have merits in that time, so the house is the smallest between the 5 houses in Namsan-go Hanok Village. And however, he had a little bit bigger house than normal people since he helped rebuilding the Gyeongbokgung Palace. This place is the kitchen. Kitchen was the most important place for the family, so it was placed right next to the women's quarter. Also, the Korean kitchen had the special heating system called ondol. When you see this picture shows how the ondol worked. When the people start fire from this place, the heated air goes through the air passage, and then the left air goes out of the chimney as a smoke. While the heated air moves through the air passage, it could heat the floor so that the people could sit on warm floors in the winter. And also, women closed the door and took a bath in the kitchen too. And when you see the decorations, you can see that the roof and the kitchen are decorated different. When you see this pattern, you can think that the house is decorated tightly, and it has windows in front of the kitchen to move the food easily. And when you see the pillar, you can see that there are a stone underneath it. It is because when the water was flowing, it was to prevent the wooden pillar corroding because of the water. This place that you can see is called ante. Ante of the hanok is where the women lived, and it was the main building. It looks like the L shape when you see it in front, however, it is generally the T shape. And Ante's kitchen is a large 2-room kitchen. Even small windows which usage was to serve food from the kitchen are very detailed. With the craftsmanship of the court building master carpenter, the windows and railings are also very colorful and elaborately decorated. The gate is also erected inside the gate, and the base of the main building is high and the buildings are very colorful. And when you see this rope, what do you think that this rope's usage was? It was used to hold it when the people have take off their shoes or take on their shoes. High-graded people thought that they shouldn't lower their heads in front of the servants, so they used this rope to prevent bowing to the servants. And also, this metal kind of looking thing is used for the lifting up the doors. In summer, the weather was very hot, so people lift the door to make the room even cooler. And this place is the sarangchae. Sarangchae was the man's living quarter, and it was usually placed right in front of the gate because the men met many people. Because of confusion, people found men were very important than women, so their living place was shown to the visitors. It was used for the visitors' meeting, but this house didn't show characters well. In terms of the structure, the building looks like an annex building. There is a separate kitchen and a building at the back of the hanok.
This hanok was belonged to Kim Chun-young, an artilleryman stationed at 훈련도감, a defensive military camp in the Joseon period. His grandson was the last person to live in this house before it was moved to Namsan-gul. Kim Chun-young's house consists of a main house laid out in the shape of a Korean alphabet, 지그, and this layout shows a great concern for making the most of the space, and this was very common among modified urban houses of the time with less space. Besides the space shortage, this shape also allowed the separation of the inside from the outside, as well as the separation of women's and men's areas, essential to Joseon era architecture. So now I'll talk about the separate areas. First of all, there is harangche, which is the man's place, and ante, which is the woman's place. And the woman's place were usually inside the houses because they were not to be freely because of the Confucianism theory. So now let's look around this building. Now you can see the things which it is inside the man's place. Men's usually studied inside this building, and for example, you can see this thing. You can see the whiteboard with sand. So boys practice their writing skills on the sand. Actually, the women were not able to study, so we can't see the writing supplies that are in men's area. Now let's look around the women's area too. In women's place, we can see the thing that girls used for cooking and chores. I will tell you the thing which you can see this place. This thing is called spinning wheel. It was once used to spin clothes, and also you can see this thing on the movie Aurora. Now let's talk about another thing that we can see in this building. In Joseon Dynasty, they usually went to the house after taking off the shoes, because they usually lived sitting and lying on the floor. So when you look up here, you can see the handle. It helped them to take off and put on the shoes. Higher ranks had a slave when they are living in the house. But folding their bag is the action which they shows the respect to the higher person. So when they put on or put off the shoes without this handle, it means that they are respecting and thinking the slaves are higher person than them. So they use this handle to put on and put off their shoes.
This house is the house of Min Young-wi. This house was originally located in Gwangun-dong, but only the main quarters have survived up to this day. Min Young-wi was the Empress Myeongseong's distant relative, nephew, and the founder of Pyeongil Bank and Kwimon School. He was good at money making and became the richest man in Joseon, taking advantages of his high school positions, and he got the noble title from the Japanese government after the Japanese occupation in 1910. When you look at this picture, you can see a wall between the men's part of the house and the main part of the house. Internal and external means inside and outside. That is, men and women, which is interpreted as distinguished between inside and outside in everyday life. It means that men and women's duty, roles of men and women, and spaces of men and women are all distinguished. In Joseon Dynasty, women served as a support of men's work outside. Women also took care of the food, clothing, and shelter for the family. Ante was the main room of the woman and used by the breadwinner's wife and her mother-in-law. Unlike other houses, Minyeongwi was very rich, so it had a place called Pyeoltang, which was used by their daughters before they get married. This is the main men's part of the house, and it consists of taechyeong and rooms where neighbors and relatives gather for friendship. And the adults of the house is used to educate the young children in academics and culture. If you look inside the upper floor numaru, there's a bed where men can lie down and relax. There is a 2-room taechyeong floor in daily use, and you can see the onjol room where the outside owners stay every day. From the back side, you can see that the two spaces run forward and have an L-shaped structure. Moreover, it has a kitchen unlike typical men's part of the house. Churyeon is signboards on pillars of walls at traditional houses. It is called signboards, meaning that the first pitch was walked from the pillar to post. The signboards that you can see on each side is churyeon. It refers to writing, fine writing, a phrase that can boast of to others in brushstrokes or inscriptions on the board and posting them on the pillars of traditional house. It is a common way to use a technique that only outlines letters. In the inner quarters, people who are good at writing, wishful thinking, or words of virtue are asked to write, and sarangche writes famous poems and works of its own. If you think about it now, it can be seen as an interior effect to make the house more stand out.
Okay, now we are in front of the new house, and I brought you a picture of the owner of this house. His name is Yoon Tae-young, and he was the father of the Joseon Dynasty's last queen. So before we move on to the inside parts of the house, I would like to explain about this tall gate. This gate was called lofty gate because it was tall, obviously. And there are representatively 2 reasons that the Joseon people constructed this door this high. The first reason is that it was made for the noblemen, and the noblemen wanted to identify and show their dignity and power. So you can predict that this lofty gate was only used by the noblemen. The second reason is this. Because the noblemen usually used a palanquin, like this one over here, it was very tiresome to get off this palanquin and then walk into the gate if the gate was too short. So they made this gate long so the palanquin could enter the house right away. You can find out a very unique factor of this house when you look at the blueprint. If you look at this, it is very similar to the Chinese character I placed over here. Usually the hanoks are formatted as this shape or this shape, but uniquely this house was motivated by a Chinese character, which means the best. So, and one thing I have to tell you is that this house wasn't mainly focused on functioning as a house, but it was rather to function as a place to give memorial services to their ancestors. So you might wonder where they gave memorial service to their ancestors, and it is right over here. This is called sada, and I will explain it right now. We are finally in front of the highlight of this house, the shrine. Usually, the normal people in Joseon Dynasty didn't have a shrine inside their houses. But the wealthy ones and the rich people afforded one and built one for their ancestors. So over here in the shrine, there are three things that we should look for. The first point is the location of the shrine. Let's think about it. If the shrine is a place where we worship our ancestors, then where should it be located at? Yes, of course, at the highest place of the building. So if we look again at the blueprint, this place, this place was actually higher than the buildings down here. And in case you forgot it, this is the shrine we are looking at. The second factor is that there are 4 doors over here. This represents that the Joseon people usually worship their ancestor up to 4th generation. This is a picture, so it might be not clear to look inside the shrine. So so over here there are each inside each of these doors, there are these kinds of table and chairs. So there were a rule for placing the ancestors, and so the eldest ancestor were placed in the left end, and the youngest ancestor was placed in the right end. Then you might wonder, what if a new family member died and they have to go into the shrine and there were no space to go in? Then the eldest ancestor, which was in the left end, would be moved to the grave. And will be moved to the grave, and the rest of it would move one side left towards the left. Then this part would be empty, and the newly died family member will be worshipped over here. And the third interesting thing we should look in the shrine is that if the eldest ancestor was a person who did a great role for the country or the family members, this ancestor were not moved to the grave, but was moved to a special shrine and was permanent over there.
Now we are going to see the last house of the Namsan Hanok village. This house belonged to Yoon Do-kyung, the uncle of Empress Sun Jung-kyo. We presume that this house was built in 1910s. He built about 20 houses and the relatives lived together. Now most of the houses are gone, but only 2 houses are left, and this house is one of them. When this Hanok village has been made, people tried to move the house to here, but the house was too old, so they just reenact the house here. So the house we're going to see is like the real house, but it is not the real house. This house was built for the Yundakyang's concubines. If you see the house, you can notice the structure of this house is different from other houses we've seen before. The shape of the house is a square. That was because this was for the women, and following to the Confucian ideas, women's quarters should be deep inside the house. So it has a attractive structure. This house can be divided into 3 parts. First, this little space right in front of the house is for the servants of this house. If someone knocks at the door, they open the door and guarded the house. This part is for the women's, and this part is for the men's. If you notice, the women's quarter are more high, fancy, and beautiful. That's because the men of this house came time to time and temporarily. If you see the inside of this men's quarter, you can see it is very small and have not that many things inside. And if you see this part, you can see 3-storied rocks, and these rocks can show the people the rank of the person who lived here. And you can see the three stories, and that means the relative